Let them come.
Hey everyone, this is Arnoldless98, and here we have Nightbird, the flying robot ninja from Transformers Rise of the Beasts. And I'm continuing with the Terracons, and I apologize for the long wait for this build. Nightbird here was an extremely tricky build, considering I didn't have a lot of reference material for what you see on the final CGI model. I ended up basing all my references off the screenshots of the movie instead of the figures and toys, since those weren't very accurate. And as a result, there might be some aspects that you might not find perfectly accurate, and there's a lot of parts for me that I was stuck between two different design choices. And of course, there are free PDF instructions over in Rebrickable, and if you don't like certain design choices on this build, you could always modify it yourself. Of course, it's Lego. And to start, here she is in her Nissan GTR R33 car mode. And taking a quick 360 here, you can see there's tons of tiles and there's not too many studs, and this car mode looks really slick. And the hardest part for me to figure out with this car mode was the color for the body. The car is kind of a very extremely dark gray with a very glossy shine to it. And the closest Lego color would actually be like a gunmetal gray, as you can see on this minifigure here. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of parts in that color, so I had to choose between dark gray and black. And I chose black because I feel like dark gray is a little too light. You can see right here. And especially this is more apparent in comparison with Scourge, because I want to build him in dark gray. And you can see in these shots, Nightbird is clearly a much darker color for the car parts. And of course, if you do prefer the dark gray, it's 100% possible to build her in that color. And another drawback to this car mode are the hubs. They should actually be in a purple, which is a pretty key feature of the actual car. Unfortunately, these don't come in purple. The only ways I can get them is if I use these smaller tires with a purple stud, which would make the car look really disproportionate. So I'm perfectly fine with this choice. And taking a closer look at the car mode, you can see the side mirrors are actually in magenta, which is the only part in the car mode in that color. And the front is pretty clean with the smaller lights, and this is all medium nougat, which is a very nice contrast, and this is all very well tiled off. Then you got the 4 tail lights and the spoiler. Unfortunately, you can see some robot bits here, like the little feet and some medium nougat peering through. She rolls alright. There's a lot scraping on the ground. And coming into the bottom, you can see everything is compact here, since she does turn to a relatively large and slender robot. So there's not a lot of gaps. And funny thing, the only hollow part on this car mode is this back area, which can kind of double as a trunk to fit more butterflies. And for a size comparison, we got Ravage and a minifigure, Studio Series War for Cybertron Bumblebee. And here he is, my Lego Rise of the Beast Bumblebee, finally with Mirai, since you see these two during the chase sequence in Peru. And like my other Carbots, she is pretty similar in length. And now for the transformation. This part is really fun. She does a lot of unique things you don't see on my Carbots. And I pretty much made this from scratch. I didn't really follow the mainline deluxe. And to start, you want to take the front window and fold it up, and same for the back windows. Take these side panels, fold them up, same for this side, and then take these side windows and then fold these up on this hinge. And then you want to take this side section here, grab it, and start pulling here. There's going to be an extra joint inside here, if you can see that very well. That holds this little bar that holds this whole section. And same for this side, just grab it and pull. And now this is all open. You want to take the front of the car and bend it upwards. And then coming over to here, these will be the arms. You kind of split them ever so slightly. Then take this section, move it up. And then all this is going to rotate on this joint here. And then you can take this joint and fold it up. Lots of little folding. And then on this hinge system, you're gonna rotate this outwards, rotate this down, take this will become the shoulder pad, fold it out, and then straighten the arm like this, rotate it, and then you take the blade so it kind of becomes parallel with the rest of this hand. And same for this side. This part is easily my least favorite part of the transformation because of how finicky it can be. Fold this forward, it's a little mini puzzle, and then you rotate this up here, rotate this around, and then straighten the arm out like this, and then fold all this around, and then take the shoulder pad like that. And yeah, those are the two arms. And then getting her into a little T pose, you want to just fold these panels outwards. And this part is going to become very interesting. You bring up the head here, take all this here, this is going to be a hinge in the middle, this is all going to crunch up, and then you can drop the legs down. And you can see these arm struts are very loosely held in place. This is very rare on my smaller builds, but this is a Technic lift arm, and the pin in this lift arm is going to allow the reverse stud on the back of this arm joint to tab right in like this and like that. And now the arm is very solidly held in place. And now for the legs, I think these are my favorite part. You can see the two spoilers here. Bring them and keep folding them all the way down like that. And now you can unfold the legs like this. And I'll deal with this leg right here. Rotate it 90 degrees. Fold this up forward, fold this forward, and then rotate it at this joint, and then rotate the wheel here, and you fold it forward for now. And this section here is just gonna rotate on this bar and fill in this little gap as you set all this down together. So you wanna make sure the spoiler goes down first before the leg. And that's one leg. And same for this side. Rotate this 90 degrees, fold this forward, rotate this, rotate that, and then coming up to here, fold this down, and then this will allow all this to rest together, and then bring down these panels. They should be shifted up all the way. It's on the sliding joint. And you can get her to stand for now. Next, you want to take this front section, bring it down to become the front skirts. Fold the arms like this, and then fold the shoulder pads up to make sure this whole section is flat for clearance. And now coming to the top, you want to pull this section forward like that, and then coming into this section here, and you want to split it. This is the front of the car. You can see there's a stud and there's an anti-stud where it tabs together. And then coming over to here, you want to peel this apart, these two wheels, and shift them upwards. You can see the bracket kind of tabs right into this part perfectly. And now that is free, you can rotate the front of the car together, reposition the head, and then all this is going to tab using the same tab for the car mode for the chest. And next we're going to deal with the wheels on the back. This is going to rotate forward, and as you do that, you rotate this section along with it to become the intakes for the jetpack. And just like this. Rotate all this down. Make sure the wheels are as close together as possible and set them down on the back windshield here. And this section right here is just going to kind of be this little flap here is kind of the jetpack thrusters. And then we're going to deal with these wings. You want to rotate this upwards here, and then rotate all this up, and then put this hinge back to where it was for car mode. And this whole wing section should line up with the back wheel here. And same for this side. You rotate this around, and then set all this upwards. Get her to stand, and finally just put the shoulder pads back and bend them at an angle, and then put back the arm here. And there you go. There's Nightbird in her robot mode. You Nightbird around, you see her proportions are pretty good with the nice slender legs and the really kind of bulky upper body. And even the back is pretty clean. You could kind of pretend the backpack is part of the jetpack as a whole. And taking a closer look at the head, you got the nice forehead visor and then the mask. And this is my first LEGO Transformer to use magenta. And the chest is unchanged from the car mode, which is a criticism I've got, that it's a little too bulky. But I think it's fine how it is, considering it has a split and reform, and the shaping, I really like the shaping for the car mode. And she's supposed to have like a little small like crack through the middle of the chest. You can kind of do that if you untab the chest, but that makes things more unstable and interferes with the arm articulation, so I prefer to tab it together. And her arms are pretty spindly. We got the shoulder pads, and one of my favorite parts is that the arm blades can stay on for the transformation, and there's no parts forming. I know the shaping of the blades isn't perfect, but I wanted to make them thin so they could fit under the car. And then coming into the legs, you got the hip panels, which can move around, which is the sides of the car, which is nice. And this part is supposed to have a lot of medium nougat. I kind of substituted with the dark tan for this, but it's a nice contrast with the very thin legs and the smaller feet. And I'm really happy how I got the wheels to hang out the back. And the jetpack section is pretty clean. You got the two intakes, and then the exhausts are in the back here. These wheels should be a little closer together and a little farther down, but that's alright. And if you really want, like in the movie, you can fold the wings up like that, or if you also want the concept art look. And her articulation is pretty good, considering she's like kind of like a ninja. There's like a series of, there's like kind of like a double joint here for the head. You can rotate. My favorite part is when you move this joint forward, you can get her to look up like she's like flying. I thought that would be very important. And the arms are solid as well. You got the shoulder pads, which can kind of move out of the way and allow for a T pose and to bend forward. The bicep is a little bit fragile because of this clip, but I think it's okay. And then she got some wrist articulation for the weapons we'll show later. And of course you can move the blades. Unfortunately, there's nothing at the waist, but you can move the hip skirts up and down to be more dynamic, as well as the front skirts. And of course, a very high kick and a 90-degree bend at the knee. And the ankles are very interesting. This front section doesn't move, it's all one piece, but this back section where the wheel is technically is the ankle, so you can kind of get her into a nice pose if you bend the back sections. And she does a pretty good job supporting everything on her small feet, even with the backpack, as you can see here. And for her weapons, of course, you have the built-in arm blades. You can always take them out to kind of pretend they're concealed. And next up we have our two katanas here. These aren't perfectly accurate to the movie. The ones in the movie have these like yellow lights in them. If I wanted to do that brick built, that would be too bulky, so I just wanted to go with the single blade piece. And of course these clip right into her hands. And you can get her in all sorts of interesting poses with these two swords. And it even helps that it's on a clip, so there's a little bit of a wrist swivel. And one final accessory is a little bomb she uses in the museum fight. Basically just a Travis brick with a bunch of these slopes. And she can kind of hold it. Other than that, it's just a little thing that sits around. And one final feature, coming to the back here and taking out this panel, you can see there's a little Technic hole right here. And because of that hole, you can kind of make a makeshift stand and kind of have her in some kind of aerial pose, which is really neat, especially for a flying character like her. And like that. And of course you can give her the swords for some more posing fun. I really wish more of my builds had compatibility with a stand like this. And for a comparison, here she is with the minifigure and Ravage. And here she is with Studio Series Bumblebee and the Child Gundam. And here she is with RC, her Terracon co-worker Freezer, who is horribly oversized. And with my other two Carbots, Mirage and Bee. And from here, my Rise of the Beast builds are only going to get bigger. And you can see she's considerably taller than both of them, which is accurate to the scale. And it's kind of cool because they do start out, all three of them have very similar sized cars. But you can see Mirage and Bee have a lot of hollow space that isn't used, which was why they're a little bit smaller. And in case you are curious, Nightbird's wings are kind of easy to remove, if you know what I mean. And that is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed Nightbird here. She was quite the challenge to design to make her kind of slender look, as well as managing all the kibble into her jetpack. And also I really wanted her to be much bigger than my other Carbots for scale. So there's a lot of mass shifting, as well as dealing with the certain color limitations, which I think turned out fine despite these sacrifices. And I'll say she's not quite up there with Bee and Wheeljack because she's a little bit on the fragile side, but both modes are super clean. And once again, if you want to build her, check out the instructions on Rebrickable. And if you don't like the black, you can always build her in dark gray too. And you probably know who's coming next. I'll be continuing on with more of the Terracons, so you'll see that video soon. It might be delayed a week or so, so just be a little patient about that. And I'll see you guys then.